overall, you're anti this sack. Obviously, I follow you on all the social media platforms and I watch your content. I know that you're furious with this.
Ange earned the right to go again next season and take on some of the learnings that he would have absorbed by winning the Europa League and the failings in the Premier League and go again and get better. And it might have gone tits up, and it probably would have done, right? You've seen this in football before, Ten Hag, there's other examples. If you give him another opportunity by October, November, by Christmas, he'll be sacked.
If you believe that.
But I think that would have been the most likely outcome. But the stronger feeling within me is I just wanted to see if he'd have got it right. And if he did, we'd had a manager who's a proper ambassador for our football club who defended the idea of the Spursiness sort of dominating what the club is. And, he really, for example, Arsene Wenger saying that Man United and Tottenham shouldn't get a Champions League place or win in Europa League, which, it's been the case for 10 years. That is the case. And he just said, there's just something about Tottenham. It just drives people crazy. It's like there's something about our football club that people just sort of latch onto. And it's the idea that we don't win and we'll always end up screwing it up in some way. I've never had a manager who's kind of backed the club in the way he did. And I think the fact that the club, Daniel Levy specifically, just decided to sack him 3 weeks after winning our first trophy in years is scandalous, really, and he deserved another opportunity.
I do appreciate what you're saying here, but is it fair the way that you're approaching this? Are you not just being completely emotional? And you have there is a place for emotion in football. Of course, there is. There is a reason for you to be this emotional, but the league form was appalling. You saying that you've never had a manager perhaps who defends the culture of the club. It feels like yesterday to me that he actually declared war on the fans. He had a pop at the fans that wanted to lose to Man City. Those fans were correct. He had a pop at them. At Stamford Bridge this year, do you remember when he was cupping his ears?
No, there were.
You're not mentioning those things. You're talking about the positives because you love him because he won the trophy.
No, mate, you're 100% right, and it is completely emotional reaction. And I know the logical and sensible thing would be that he's probably right to sack him and replace him for Thomas Frank. I always don't care. I just wanted to see what it is. What I felt, what he delivered, I have never felt following my football club. And when you're emotional, when you're in love with something and an idea, think of all the terrible mistakes we've made with women in the past.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, chance would have been a fine thing, but yeah. No, I know. But do you know what? It's sort of how I used to have to speak about Frank Lampard when he was Chelsea man.
Yeah.
People would rationally give me reasons for him to be sacked.
Of course.
And I would say, shut up, you haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
Because you don't understand. And you're not meant to understand, you don't support Chelsea. And that's how you feel about Postecoglou. You kind of had an opportunity to make the most of it and then back somebody.
Yeah.
And now it's looking like that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Players are gutted.
Yeah, you saw it. You saw the fallout. I mean, generally when managers leave, certainly in recent times, there's very little reaction at all. But there
Pochettino. I remember nobody said a word to Pochettino.
Yeah.
Weird. Like a lot of those players owed a lot to Pochettino, and very few said anything.
I don't know why that was. I don't know, maybe if things have changed, I'm not sure. But we did a poll just before he was sacked. Didn't know he was going to be sacked.
This is what, on the Fighting Cock?
Yeah, just before. We've got on our social media. It's like 80,000 people, right? And 70% want him to stay. That's how emotional we were after that game and continue to be. 30% wanted him gone, and they were right as well. There's no wrong answer here.
Do you know what, mate? I think there is a wrong answer. I do.
Do you think keeping him would have been the wrong answer?
I feel like when you make any decision, this isn't even about this decision or football or anything. If you make it with emotion, you're probably not seeing the facts. Now, the question then becomes, is there a place for emotional decisions?
Not running a football club.
Probably not.
No.
Probably
That's
not.
why, fans shouldn't run football clubs, probably. And, Daniel Levy is a fan, but doesn't, he's
not a fan, not in the true sense of
exactly. It. But he would say he is a fan of Spurs.
There is, however, one reason why I think keeping him would have made sense, in my opinion. Firstly, there's lots of reasons to say keep him. But the one that I would really say is strong here is because of the replacement. Like, if you were replacing him with somebody who I thought was really top manager, then I would go, okay, this makes sense. But replacing him with Thomas Frank, I find that quite underwhelming. Well, how do you feel about it?
I feel quite hopeful. Look, you could put any manager in there, right? And I'll give you the same answer.
It's all Levy based.
That's another issue as well. But I'm just position myself always and look for the most the outcome that best suits my agenda, which is the betterment of Tottenham Hotspur. So I have to believe that Thomas Frank will do a better job than Ange Postecoglou. Otherwise, I want to sit here miserable for the next 4 months, and it doesn't feel like the Nuno appointment, for example, where it felt like it was over before it even begun.
Right.
Whereas this feels a little bit different. I think he's underrated. I think his performances consistently for Brentford, despite the kind of disadvantages they have with financial constraints compared to other clubs, it's just been outstanding. Like four or five of their starters came up with them.
No, they were
into
great.
The Premier League.
He's done a great job at Brentford. The question then becomes, doing a great job at Brentford, does that mean that you do a great job at Tottenham? Are they even the same job?
No.
They're not, are they?
No. I mean, there is a step up. The big six, if you like, the ones that generate the most revenue, the ones that with demands from their fans are so significant. That jump, and we've seen it at Spurs as well, managers that were perceivably coming down to join us struggled at Tottenham. You know, Jose Mourinho and Conte, having won what they did elsewhere, you could say that was a step down. Most people were surprised when Conte, at least yourself, Conte was made manager at Spurs, and he struggled, and Mourinho struggled eventually. Nuno struggled. It was that manager that was on an upward trajectory, i.e. Espanyol, Southampton, Tottenham, where it felt like he was grateful of the opportunity. Postecoglou the same, grateful of the opportunity, and put everything into it. Whereas the other two just felt like they didn't want to be there legitimately, like they hated us. It was terrible.
Yeah. Conte especially, it was a very weird thing. I don't know if I've ever.
He's a mad
actually
chap.
Hated Tottenham whilst he was employed by Tottenham.
It was mad. Like it was so hard to understand, and because these press conferences were so difficult to understand as well, you started reading between the lines.
No, that press conference from Antonio Conte after the Southampton 3-3 game will go down in history. Like, not now because it's quite recent, but you know when we see things from a bygone era, like you see Brian Clough like clipping that fan who runs on the pitch and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that Conte press conference in 15 years, people will go, "What's this?"
I was angry with him when he did it. I was at that Southampton game. I was furious. I'm like, don't highlight all the problems. Your job is to fix them.
Yeah.
Fix the problems. But the longer the time goes on, and you watch, we heard this has been come up a few times in the last month or two. He didn't say much that wasn't correct.
No,
really, he really did. The one constant at Tottenham is Daniel Levy, and the one, you could argue that we won that because Daniel Levy chose not to sack Postecoglou when
he does deserve a bit of credit for that.
He does. Yeah, he does indeed. Yeah. Any other football club. Certainly the club at the size of Tottenham would have sacked Ange Postecoglou.
Long gone. But I would have also said Tottenham because over the years, if you think about the sacking of Mauricio Pochettino about 6 months after getting to the Champions League final felt premature. Yeah. The sacking of Jose Mourinho 6 days before the League Cup final felt nuts. It would have been so easy to sack Postecoglou. Everybody would have rationalised.
Well, so there is an assumption that the reason why he wasn't sacked is because there was a groundswell of negativity around Daniel Levy, and he didn't want. If he would have sacked Postecoglou,
he was a barrier.
Yeah. So
insulation,
and Postecoglou would have known that, and to his credit, took a lot of the responsibility for the poor league form. Also, Daniel Levy bought into this idea that we would just prioritise the Europa League. They have used Ange Postecoglou's words at the parade, but in the interviews afterwards, in promotional material, a week before he was sacked.
Yeah.
I know the media team is separate from the run of the football club, but it's just all. I mean, Daniel Levy doesn't operate with a degree of shame. He goes about his business.
It's everybody stabbing everybody. It's like Lady Macbeth. Daniel Levy is Lady Macbeth. Everything's going on. Yeah, but he's now gone for Frank. Right. Let's try and focus on the future. He's gone for Frank, which of all of the managers that you can think of done a good job this season at clubs where a club of the size of Tottenham Hotspur could prize them away, I would say that you've got the least appealing.
I don't agree with that.
Glasner being probably the most appealing. I think Iraola being a very interesting proposition. Marco Silva being the next cab off the rank to a big club.
If you could give me one of those, I think Glasner would have been my
European
first
experience as well.
If he's not available, he's 18 months. He's just won the FA Cup. He's not going to leave Palace. He's going to lead them into Europe, God willing. They sort all this stuff with John Textor out, but he's going to lead them into Europe, right? Whereas Frank is at the end of a 7-year stint at Brentford and he needs a new job. So I think, why not? Just give it a go. It feels like the understated thing that might actually work.
Well, who would have been your ideal choice? You know, when it became apparent that Postecoglou was on borrowed time, Was Frank in your reckoning?
I think it was one of three. It was Silva, Frank, and Areola.
And
the fall off towards the end of the season from Bournemouth was worrying, and they played a very similar brand of football to Tottenham. Would he come in and demand the respect that Postecoglou had? I don't know, but I think I'm quietly pleased with Frank. I really am. In my dream, I'd have said someone like Jurgen Klopp. Like if we imagine to prize him out of. But in realistically, I think Frank feels like a sensible choice, and the football's going to be a bit more pragmatic. He's typically very good at winning the midfield battle, and he spoke in a press conference about how much he loves the midfield of Kulusevski, Basuma, and Bentancur. He's like, the way he spoke about us before we played them in the week means that he kind of just acute understanding of what's going on at Spurs. So I understand it's not an exciting, sexy signing. He's not the most...
That's stability, though.
Yeah, that's what we need.
Stable isn't a bad word, is it?
No, not for Spurs, when it's been a bin fire at times this season.
What's first on the Thomas Frank agenda to succeed at Tottenham?
He's got a couple of things working for him, right? We're much better than 17th. The players we got are just by putting them into a more structured system will give us 10, 15 more points next season. But he's also got a problem that he can solve very simply in the way that he played football with Brentford, and that's our non-existent midfield. When Postecoglou had the ball, he wanted everybody forward. Essentially, we'd have a front line of five. We'd have fullbacks in the 10 role.
Yeah,
it was madness, Rory. You wouldn't have seen this, right? You might have seen examples of it, but we would concede possession in the final third, and that would 9 times out of 10 result in Vicario having to make a save. That's crazy. Isn't it?
Yeah.
You lose the ball around your box, right? Yeah. Well, Vicario's got to save us here.
Yeah.
That happened at times. So when I'm speaking now, I can think, well, obviously he had to be replaced. But these are simple things that Thomas Frank will be able to bring in. The other thing is that he's just so adaptable.
Yeah.
So he plays several different formations depending on who we're playing against. As opposed to the kind of idea that Postecoglou was like, it's just who we are, this is what we're always going to do. Where he's just basically got an opportunity, given the failings of Postecoglou and how open we was, to look really impressive without doing a great deal of work. And that's going to really work for him and endear him to the supporters. The other thing he's got is an ability to create a culture of a connection between the supporters and the players. It's a little known fact, or at least I didn't know it. I spoke to a Brentford fan last week on my podcast. And he said he managed to build a really strong relationship between the fans and the players. And when they would win a game, they would do like a lap of honour. I didn't know they did this. Whereas they go and clap each side. I don't know if it'll work at Spurs, especially if you just get beaten by someone.
But you know what? Even talking about that, even acknowledging it, the fact that it's in Thomas Frank's mind is a good thing.
Yeah.
Like a relationship with the fans, an understanding with the fans, a rapport with the fans. It's so important. Do you know who did that so well? And when Antonio Conte came into Chelsea, obviously we'd had a terrible season the season before. He immediately did that. We beat West Ham on the first day of the season.
How did he go about? Because it's not
very small things. He was very clever. Do you know one of the first photos of Antonio Conte at Chelsea? Do you know what it was? It was a press release. It was him looking up at the Peter Osgood statue.
Yeah.
So it's him. He's not a tall man. He's staring up at this kind of looming statue. It was just that. There is an understanding of him trying to immerse himself and like understand who Peter Osgood is. What does he mean to the club? Why is there a statue of him here? Those things were just so important. And then we beat West Ham on a Monday night, first day of the season.
Go in the crowd.
Yeah. Jumped headfirst into the family enclosure. Such a good...
Mate, weirdly, like Eric...
Swung off the dugout.
Yeah. When Eric Dyer entered the stand to beat up one of our fans, he was never more universally loved.
Yeah.
It's like... Because there's such a barrier between the manager and the players, and they're so idolised. Frank is not going to dive into the family enclosure.
He'll do it in his own way, though. He'll do it in the own way that we just established there.
And that's crucial because White Lane was pretty poisonous at times, and the hatred of Daniel Levy is still palpable. And they've brought in Vinay Venkatesan, who's a new CEO, whose remit, at Spurs, but also he did it very well at Arsenal, is building relationships with fans. And Levy and the board have been terrible at that. Our one board member has been stood down, Donna Cullen, who wasn't the best, and that was part of her job. But Venkatesan's come in, and hopefully we'll see a shift.
And do you think that Levy might now almost redefine his approach off the back of success, off the back of this? If there is ever a moment for Tottenham to change strategy, It's now, isn't it?
The part of the reason why there hasn't been any kind of takeover or even partial takeover of Tottenham is that Daniel Levy is insisting on remaining in charge.
I'm surprised, aren't you? Like, I don't know Daniel Levy.
He's his entire identity. No, he doesn't do anything else. This is it.
No, exactly. But surely he's had 25 years in the same job, and you will disagree with this, and I will disagree with it. But the facts of the matter are, he's done a very good job.
Yeah.
Right? This is a very layered thing, but just top line, he's done a very, very good job.
Yeah.
He's earned lots of money.
Yep.
He'll earn loads of money when he eventually leaves. Just have a cigar, put your feet up. Get to the Icos Andalusia.
I know. That's what we would do on the beach.
I'd have done it 15 years ago.
Mate, so would I, right? And this is what these people are like. It's because money's no object. And what's the next currency after money? It's attention. It's power.
Do you think that's the motivation for leaving?
Yeah, it's his complete identity. Who is he if he isn't Tottenham chairman? He's just a little ball bloke with loads of money.
All I really want to do in my life is walk around my house in a onesie.
Right, 100%.
And Daniel Levy could do that.
Absolutely.
And he's got a wicked house. I imagine he's got a great island in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Probably a waterfall island.
When Tottenham is sold, he owns 29.9% of Enoch, which means he's due a third of what will be 3.5 billion to 4 billion pounds.
Imagine the gaff he'll have in Totteridge.
He'll be a billionaire. Well, I mean, he's got tax and stuff, but he'll be a very rich man. His kids are secured forever.
Just put on a onesie.
Just go. You don't need this stress. You've got people in the crowd, in the stadium going, like,
swearing at him and all that. I know. I saw someone, mate. I saw a video where he was out for like eggs Benedict in Totteridge, and some geezer was having a pop at him. He's sitting like, you don't need this.
Why do you go anywhere?
But mate, let's just get serious again for one moment.
Right.
Realistically, what is the goal for Tottenham next season? What constitutes success for Thomas Frank if he does end up coming in?
Once again, Tottenham are in transition, right? But it's only transition if you're not playing well.
Yeah.
So if we start off and you know you've won a few games and you're kind of in the top half of the league, come Christmas, then I think that's fine. If you're being sensible, you say like anything from 8th upwards would be a decent season. And if you're not being sensible and you're still hung up on Ange Postecoglou, you're going to be saying we gave up a cup-winning manager to finish 8th in the league.
Well, there we have it. I'll tell you what, he's going to have a big job when he comes in.